How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and I asked a couple days ago right here in the YouTube community section and over on Twitter for your biggest questions about Starfield ahead of the Developer Direct event that's taking place in under a month now. It's crazy how quickly time goes, and I have all those questions here. Today I wanted to go through each of them, give my thoughts, my perspectives, whether I think we'll see it answered, whether it won't get answered at this event. But before we get into them, be sure to let me know if there's anything not here in this video. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what your biggest question is and start a discussion. Want to hear what you're feeling. Are you excited? Are you nervous about Starfield? I want to hear it all. Just keep it civil. But let's get started here with our first comment. This is coming from MC3280, and they want to know, are we able to walk around our ship while we are in space? And absolutely, hands down, this should be something Bethesda is able to do. Yes, you do have the bulky designs on the spaceships, these heavy metal plating going on with the starships, and because it's the NASA punk vibe, obviously not a lot of windows, not the sleek designs you get in, say, a Mass Effect. But I will say, being able to just look out and see the planets, see the nebula, and while you're not exclusively piloting, shouldn't be that hard to do. There's not that much to render outside of your ship. There's a shot here in the trailer that showcases as much, where everything outside the ship is fully visible and the player's walking around. Mind you, they're on the ground, so why not in space? Kazamezo, I hope I pronounced that right, is asking, will jetpack be illegal inside the cities? And if it is there special anti-jetpack police unit that chases you down? Probably no, they don't have an anti-jetpack unit to come after you. I would imagine that it's going to work the same way as horses did in Skyrim, where you try to perform the action of a jetpack and it just says, you can't do that right now, right? It's going to be to everybody's massive disappointment, but that's what mods are for, and sure enough, there's going to be one. If that is the case, right day one, there'll probably be a mod that lets you fly around with your jetpack, so I wouldn't be worried about that. Police? Most likely no, and I imagine that this isn't going to be something that Bethesda goes out of their way to cover during the event, so we'll have to find out when the game does formally release. But speaking of jetpacks, J-Film's question is, how are the jetpacks used in the bedroom? Now, this is a judgment-free zone. Nobody is getting criticized here for your own interesting quirks and tastes. You're entitled to whatever you enjoy, but I will just say that the jetpack was not the only thing getting turned on when it was used. Do with that what you will. Abdoteric? Abdoteric, I'm gonna go with that one. Hope that's right. 4363 says, I want to know more about weapons in different builds. Like, can I go with a hacker/stealth build? Is there hacking? How will stealth work? Are there more specialized weapons that are not usual SMGs, shotguns? I have so many questions, honestly. Yeah, that's a lot. What I'm going to focus on here is specifically the different builds. We know that obviously there's going to be a ton of different builds you can do. It's staple of a Bethesda game. As to how complex they go is a great question indeed, and I really am expecting that Starfield does a bit more of a dive into the skill system than what we've already seen. We do have a good idea based on the gameplay shown about how you spend points, how you earn them, that sort of thing, but to be able to go through some more of the skill trees to get a very comprehensive look at the types of things that are available. And what I'm particularly looking for is if you can use some of the non-combat skills or some of the combat skills in non-combat ways, and vice versa. A great example of this, if you look at, for example, Skyrim, the restoration skill can really only be used for just that, but there's plenty of spell mods out there that give you radiant damaging spells, so now you could use your restoration offensively to deal radiant damage to your enemies. And then you download a perk mod that adds in new perks that might correlate and really synergize with those spells, and you're golden. You have a whole new way to experience using this new functionality. And when it comes to Starfield, whether it is hacking or diplomacy or your actual weapon skills, I do want to see both offensive and non-offensive and utility ways to go about all the skills that you can, or most of the skills that you can obtain. Maybe something like for companions, if you could take more than one, be able to take a leadership role, if you will, where they get more health and they get more damage, possibly at the expense of your own. You are more squishy as a result because you're sending your companions out into battle for you. That would would be interesting, but just more dynamic ways you can use existing builds. Speaking of companions and having more control over them, Kid, thank you for the simple username, by the way, says, I wonder if there's any difference to how companions work during battle. I'd love if you had more control over them if it were similar to Mass Effect in terms of using specific powers, but I don't know what would need to be given up to make that happen. So BGS, do your thing, which is a good sentiment to have. I don't personally expect that companions will operate in terms of commanding them and setting them up with tactics much differently than what we've seen in the past, even though that's what I really would love to see. You do have the differences from Mass Effect where there's not necessarily powers that they could use. Outer Worlds sort of had this where there were ultimate abilities that the companions could do, but Starfield will, I hesitate to say that's going to be a part of it. And of course, if you want to customize their weapon, a big thing in Mass Effect is switching out what weapons they're using. You just sort of do that before you go into battle. You give them the weapons and tell them to equip it, and they'll charge. I think the coolest thing would be if you could position them a bit more strategically, so that way if you want to put them on both sides, if you can have two at a time, put them on both sides of a doorway, you run through, and then they're flanking the enemy from both sides. That would be cool, although that's really big time dependent on how Starfield's AI is going to work, which, all things considered, hopefully it's a step up, but I'm not expecting much different than what we've gotten in the likes of Fallout 4, for example. The biggest upgrade to companions, which I believe it was Will Shen actually sort of stated this, is how they interact with the world, or maybe Todd Howard, how they interact with the world. They respond to the things that are around them. They're more dynamic. They have more dialogue to say to you, those sorts of things. And that can be a massive improvement for the companions if it's done properly. Jake is asking, will we get that watch announced along with the collector's edition? Don't let me down, Bethesda. 100%. Yeah, if this is assuming no more delays, and Bethesda's aware of that, 100% they're going to want to show off the collector's edition and all of the goodies it comes with. It's also the opportunity to show off things like if there is a companion app or a tie-in app for Starfield. I personally would love to see one that just lets you create your character and play around with the different build types. I think that'd be pretty neat. But assuming there's some kind of companion app, that would be announced. Pre-orders might even go live. But what I'm more curious about is, assuming the watch that we've seen out in the open is the biggest thing that the deluxe edition is coming with. Yeah, your steelbook case, maybe some pins and some small other goodies, but mainly the watch is the major sell there. Would you be picking up the collector's edition? Let's say it's around $150 to $180 US for that. Curious how many people are super interested in that watch. I would love to have one. The Modus Files, which check out the Modus Files if you're interested. A Fallout audio drama podcast. It's pretty good. They ask, can we have settlement pets? Do space dogs exist? We've seen a cat in the concept art, didn't we? Way back when. Remember when we were just getting concept art for this game? God damn. Feels like centuries ago. Let me bring around my space dog. Let me bring around my space cat. If people on the ship take the time to pet it as it walks by too, that would be pretty awesome. I want to pet my space cat. Whatever, I'll take even an alien animal that you could have on board as a stowaway, like you had the Bogling in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Give me something. Give me something, companion, animal-wise. Bethesda, if you're listening, come on. Not that hard to do. You could do it. There's enough time. Traverser asks, with what has happened recently, I'm assuming referring to Redfall and the buggy launch of that game, have you considered a delay? Perhaps hire a real QA company to come in and play test and give constructive feedback. Delays are usually met by if they're not meeting certain criteria on their calendar as to what milestones they want to hit. So all of this is gonna be internal things we will never hear about at the end of the day, unless there's some kind of investigative journalism report that comes out about Starfield's development. Then maybe we'll get some of this deeper kind of inside info, if you will. What I will say is, as far as polish goes, 1000% I am hoping that Xbox is lending some of its engineers and QA teams and people resources as much as possible in order to help Starfield's launch be as clean as possible, right? We saw how important this game is for Xbox. We know how important this game is for Bethesda, and of course it's one of the most anticipated games of 2023, objectively speaking. So all eyes are going to be on Starfield. It's their biggest launch of the year, and whatever support they need to get to have that polished launch, I hope it does happen. Phil Spencer as well, based on his recent interviews, aware of the issues and ideally adjusting accordingly to make sure this goes off as clean as possible. Lieutenant Lightning says, I just really want it day one 60 FPS, and 1000%. This shouldn't be something that comes later as a patch. If it's going to be in 60 frames, it should be in 60 frames. I give pause when I hear that because we know Todd Howard's take on it, where he has publicly stated he would prefer to have 30 frames with more going on. Was that him trying to set expectations without openly stating anything or confirming anything regarding frame rate? Maybe that's looking too deep into it. But it's obviously, frame rate is a hot topic right now. Everybody is looking for 60 frames. Some people just don't care as much. I hope for console players that you can enjoy it in that higher frame rate, or at the very least you get the option with your performance or quality mode, which again, if Xbox is lending out some engineers and developers and whoever, help them with that. I wanted to save this one for last because it's actually one of my favorites, but I'm Jackal says, what is replayability like? How many story choices can we make that affect the story in impactful ways? How many combination in terms of skills, gear, factions are there? Basically, can I do the same as in Skyrim, start a game and restart after 10 hours because I'm afraid that I'm missing out on something better? And as far as the replayability goes, it's a Bethesda game, true and true. I'm going based on what we've been told. Skyrim in space, 1000%, it should give us that luxury of that replayability. What I will say is, and I've even made a video talking about this, one of the most underrated features that we've heard about publicly, confirmed for Starfield, is the multiple faction endings. That to me, if it's done properly and there's a deep level of depth to that system, more than just a reskin of the certain cities and more than just one NPC is alive and one NPC is dead, but it actually goes deeper where you are getting these divergent paths and quest lines, then you're really speaking my language. Then I can really start to get into it, especially with replayability. I will say Fallout 4, for me personally, was one of Bethesda's least replayable experiences. And even that, you can go back and do multiple playthroughs of just to go through each of the factions. And it's a great time indeed. So Starfield, probably going to be even better. We know there's an emphasis on dialogue. We know there's an emphasis on the factions. We know there's an emphasis on world reactivity. These are all things that have been publicly stated. Combine all of that together, and you're getting something you can enjoy for the next 10 years, as Todd Howard says he wants to develop 10 years. That still gives me the wiggles when I hear it. I'm not fond of that 10-year plan. Ever since Destiny 1, it's always kind of shook me the wrong way a bit, but there you go. Especially with mods. You're always going to have replayability with mods. My big question, because this has been from all you guys, so got to give one of my own at the very least. What cool leather jacket we're going to see Todd walk out on stage with? That's mine. So, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing to the channel. Really appreciate it. Hoping to hit 2,000 before Starfield does launch. That'd be pretty cool. But thank you all so much for watching. Check out some of my other Starfield videos if you have the time and are interested. And as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.